Hi, welcome to the shop. My name's Paul and we're here with John. We're going to be working on John's 2004 Mitsubishi Endeavor. And today we're going to be changing out the rear axle bearing that has gone bad. Mitsubishi has a specific procedure for figuring out if the bearing has gone bad by using a dial gauge and checking run out. I don't actually need to do that at this time because I had the vehicle in the shop for a transmission repair, and they checked it and told me it was bad. I decided I had enough mechanical aptitude to tackle it myself, and also I didn't feel like paying the $345 they were asking to do this particular job, so I purchased a new bearing online through rockauto.com, which I buy a lot of parts from. Thank you, Rock Auto. And now I'm going to do the job myself. And also too, I noticed on YouTube and other various places there aren't a lot of how-to videos for Mitsubishi Endeavor owners. So I thought I'd share a little bit and put this out there so anybody who has to do a similar job can, see something to look at. So here we go. I've already got it up on a jack stand, which you'll see shortly. Just to be safe, the floor jack is there just as a sort of a backup, but it's actually being fully supported by the jack stand. So first thing we'll do is we'll pull off the wheel and gain access to the brake system. Here we go. Alright, so now we have access to the brake rotor. Alright, so we'll get that pulled off. What I'm going to do is remove the brake caliper and hang it off to the side. Actually, I'll hang it off to the side on the spring here, so it'll take the pressure off of the brake hose so we don't damage that. Alright, so we got the caliper off. And also, while you're in here, it's always a good idea to inspect your brake pads. Make sure you have plenty of life left in them, and replace them if you need to. Another job for another day, possibly. Right now, these look very good. They've got probably 70% life left or more. Alright, so that's out of the way. Now, you should be able to take the rotor off from here, alright? But, typically, where this threads come out of the rotor, and also where the inner diameter of the rotor hat meets this hub, there's bound to be rust, which you can see there is. So, we are going to tap on it a little bit with a hammer, just to see if we can free it up a little bit. Otherwise, they also have a couple of threaded holes here that you can thread. I believe it's 8mm, either 6 or 8mm bolts into, and actually pull the hat or the rotor off of the hub that way. All right, I'm going to do the tap way first, and if that doesn't work, then we'll thread some screws in. Alright, so it looks like it's going to have to be pressed out. It's not jarring it loose enough with the caps of the hammer, so what we'll do is go ahead and find a couple of extra screws real quick and thread them in there and get this out. So I'll be right back. Alright, so I found a couple of I believe they're 6mm, like M6 screws I had sitting around. So I'm going to go ahead and push or thread these in here, and then essentially get this thing. And it's probably going to pop pretty good once it releases. There, it's starting to pop already. Alright, so just so you know, made a little honest mistake here, and I had the parking brake on, so I had my son go release it, and that freed up the inner shoes that are inside here from gripping onto the rotor, and so now it'll release the rotor much easier. Okay, so there we are. Got the rotor out of the way, and now we've exposed the actual outer part of the bearing and hub assembly that we're going to be taking off. Now, one thing I like to do is I like to put the rotor back on exactly where it came off of. So one of the things I'm going to do is slip it on real quick and mark the orientation. Okay, although it may not actually matter because we're replacing this, so I think we'll just skip that step for now. But typically, if you had to take it off, it is a good idea to mark like an orientation mark so that the rotor goes back in the same position it came off of. Sometimes if you unclock it from its original position, it might produce a vibration or a run out that's not desirable. Okay, we'll go ahead and set the rotor aside. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're going to take off this center nut, the axle nut, and the washer. And it's also very important to make sure you reorient or have the washer underneath here back in its original position, you know, with the bevel. I believe the bevel side's facing outward, but we'll take a closer look when we get this off. Alright, so I'm back, and I have a 32mm socket that we're going to use to take off this axle nut. This axle nut is actually on a pretty high torque spec. It's like 167 foot-pounds. So it's on there pretty tight. And I do have a torque wrench with me that we're going to torque it back down to that will get it back to its correct spec. But just let you know, you need a 32mm socket to remove this and to reinstall it later. Also, you need a torque wrench that's going to go above 150 pounds, you know, basically up to 200 pounds at least, which I have as well. So I'll show you that a little bit later. Alright, so axle nut is off, and we'll pull out this washer, and as you can see, it has a bevel on one side, it's flat on the other. Alright, so there's the bevel. The bevel faces outward. The flat side faces inward towards the center of the car. Okay, so we got to make sure we put that on correctly when we get to that step. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to go to the back side of this what's called the knuckle, and access the 4 bolts that hold the axle housing, or the bearing housing flange to the knuckle. So we're going to go to the back side now and have a look at that. Okay, and so we're back. We are under the vehicle now, and we are looking behind the knuckle where the rear axle, the outer part of the rear axle, enters the back side of the knuckle. And as you can see, there's 4 bolts that hold the bearing flange on. There's one there. There's basically 2 on the bottom, and then there's 2 on the top. I don't know if you can see them real well. The light down here is not the greatest, but I'm going to go ahead and be right back. I'm going to remove those 4 bolts, and then we'll move to the actual bearing removal process, from the knuckle.